These people are walking carriers of history. They truly are. And they have a unique insight to what was the first and most disastrous battle of World War II for the United States. They carry us a story about a nation unprepared for war. And they were there when the nation experienced a form of international treachery like no one had ever seen. They are a part of a generation that quite literally saved civilization in World War II. The Japanese Zero hit Kaneohe, Naval Air Station Kaneohe Bay first, 7:48. 11 Zeros came in on Kaneohe Bay. They had top speed of 310 miles an hour. They were faster than anything stationed on Oahu, heavily armed. They had a 20 millimeter cannon in each wing and two 7.7 machine guns, 500 rounds for each machine gun, 60 rounds for each cannon. And they did one heck of a lot of damage.
I was watching out toward the hangars, and the guys were getting mowed down left and right. I think we had 5 hangars. Anyway, they bombed all 5 of those and wiped those out. Got every plane except for I think there was 2 in Midway. And we had one plane in the water with a full crew on it. And of course they got that one too. They were PBYs.
The Navy's long-range patrol aircraft, the PBYs, PBY-5s on the ground at Kaneohe. They destroyed or so heavily damaged they were of no use. They virtually destroyed the Navy's long-range patrol capability in that one strike.
I just couldn't believe this was happening until I see all them red balls on their planes. So, oh yeah, it's happening.
They worked over Kaneohe with those 11 Zeros, the first wave. Cliff was in his barracks, as I recall at that time.
Had a hangover from Saturday night. And so we heard this noise and jumped up, ran to the front of the barracks, and we saw the plane, Jap planes, another flight came over, and then we saw the red ball, and the bombs are going off.
And they came in at a lower altitude, the second wave against Kaneohe, because they had already learned there was no air defense there except for whatever people could grab in the way of automatic weapons.
We had our guns set up and we're firing, but there was no, they were coming in real low and slow. It was not, they didn't have anything to fear.
The man beside him was feeding the belt. He took a hit from apparently shrapnel in the back.
And it left a hole about the size of my fist. And when he fell, he tore the belt, the ammunition belt, tore it out of the way from the gun, and it jammed it. So, and I could not fix it, so I couldn't keep on firing.
Cliff didn't think the man possibly was going to make it, but sure enough, he did.
The morning of the 7th, we were, the Enterprise launched this at 200 miles from Ford Island, or Honolulu.
The carrier was actually scheduled to be back in Pearl Harbor Saturday afternoon, the 6th.
And this was the scouting hop looking for the Japanese fleet.
Routine was to launch a scouting squadron out in front of the carriers. They could reach out further than the radar could, beyond the horizon.
So we had radio silence, and Halsey said, if you break radio silence, I'll court-martial you.
And they heard a radio transmission that was unusual to say the least.
We heard, "Don't shoot, this is an American plane."
And it was one of their pilots who said, "Don't shoot, I'm an American."
And after we got into Pearl, found out who it was, and they never found them.
Jack was in the back cockpit, and they had its canopy open, and they could smell the burning oil coming from what was going on in Pearl Harbor. Ray was a 20-year-old Marine from the small town of Waterloo, Alabama. He heard over the sound system in the Oklahoma air raid. The urgency of it convinced him something bad was happening, and of course it was. The torpedoes were already in the water.
First thing I noticed was the announcement over the public address system. They said, "Man the anti-aircraft battery." It was just sudden. Just like throwing a bucket of cold water in your face, you know. Couldn't believe it. And one of my friends was looking out the porthole, and he said, "I saw him lay a torpedo." I said, "Let me see," and I started to look out the window, and about that time water hit me in the face.
He felt the strikes of torpedoes while this incident was going on.
Felt like the ship jumped out of the water about 3 feet. And then shortly thereafter, there was a second torpedo.
The ship was rapidly listing. 13 minutes after the first bombs were falling, you can see the foremast of the Oklahoma at an angle of about 30 to 40 degrees. She's already listing that fast. At 8:15, the Oklahoma was on its side.
And I heard some people hollering for help, and some people struggling trying to get out of a porthole. And I went to their aid, and I pulled 5 sailors out of the porthole. Somebody was inside, was pushing them up. And the ship's chaplain was on the inside. He said, "I've already tried, I can't get out." And I offered him my hand. I said, "I'll try to pull you out." And he walked away, and he said, "I'm going to look around and see if there's any more guys that I can help you get out here." So I waited a few minutes. He never came back. Never saw him again.
And all of a sudden I hear, boom. And then I hear the damnedest explosions you would ever want to hear outside. I ran to the back doors, and I looked to my right, and I saw hangars 7 and 9 blow up. And then I see these little pepper things kicking up on the asphalt, and these guys are running, and I look up, and here comes a plane right at me, Japanese plane.
Just at the last minute, evidently the Japanese pilot saw power lines coming at him. So he jerked his nose up and pulled off the attack.
If he had held that doggone trigger another half second, I wouldn't be here, because I was right in his line of fire. And when he flew over, I looked up, wow, then I knew what was happening. And from then on, man, it was just chaos all over, everywhere.
What he was describing was a Val dive bomber. And their mission was, you drop your bomb, and then you take your strafing capability to Hickam Field.
We lost about 95% of all the aircraft that we had on Hickam, either damaged or destroyed. We had very few planes that could fly after that attack. And Wheeler Field was in about the same shape. Right after that's when I ran down to the motor pool.
Ed spent the rest of that day picking up wounded in his truck with other people, picking up bodies, including the bodies of a young lieutenant.
I saw some pretty nasty things, like that lieutenant that I picked up. He was damn near cut in half.
Was across from Battleship Row and saw that horrible sight there. Arizona sitting on the bottom, flames towering up into the air. Burning oil had drifted down on the Tennessee, which was moored just forward of the Arizona.
Bob Border, as it turned out, was home in the apartment the morning of the attack. The irony was on Friday night, or early Saturday morning, he was officer of the deck on the Tennessee, and he came off, as I recall, about 6 o'clock, 600 hours in the morning.
It was such mixed emotions, I'm not sure I could just describe them. There was anger, there was horror. While watching bodies of people float by and knowing that there were a lot of people killed was very depressing. We didn't know the extent of everything that had happened, of course.
It was a normal Hawaii day, you know, and I got up early, showered and everything, and was just getting my clothes on, closing my locker when the alarm went. Popped up the top side as quick as I could, just in time to see the Utah capsizing. And she was going all the way. She wasn't just leaning, she was capsizing. She turned totally upside down. And I was looking right at Battleship Row, right across the point of the island, and I saw the Arizona take the big one, that classic shot that we have, you know. I saw it, and I thought, oh my God. Because I had about 40, 50 personal friends on board. On Saturday night, we had a battle of bands at the rec center. My band took 4th place. The Arizona took 2nd, and the captain of the Arizona walked over to Lee Shockey, who was the bandmaster of the band, and he says, "I'm very proud of you." And he says, "I'll tell you what," he says, "tomorrow morning, you guys can sleep in." And that's where they are today.
And of course, the whole band was lost. In that explosion, which incidentally took the lives, there were 1,177 people.
Emotions run pretty deep, and I've been about 500 or 600 yards away from it. That's the closest I've got to it. I still don't feel that I could go to that memorial, because I don't think I could. I think I'd break right down entirely. And tears come easy, I'll tell you, in situations like that.
There's a lot of people in this country do not even know what Pearl Harbor means.
I won't get over it.
I was where I was at, and that was it. I was going to live and die there and there. And that's really the way that I felt.
We had no idea what was coming up next.
Because you weren't sure of what was going to happen tomorrow. You didn't know whether you'd be alive or not.
I forgave the Japanese many, 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 many years ago. You can forgive, but you never forget.
December 7, 1941 really was a day that changed this nation forever. There's no question about it. Because that day pushed this nation, shoved this nation, drove this nation into the most destructive war in human history. But it also taught us something else, that you cannot stand idly by when tyrants are stalking the earth. You could certainly call World War II catastrophe in and of itself, perhaps. But there was another level of catastrophe beyond that. And that was, if the United States had not entered the war on the side of Great Britain in the Atlantic and against the Japanese in the Pacific, the world would be totally different today. Totally different.